Welcome, everyone, to our next installment of GEMA Talks. I'm Rich Batista, and we are joined today by Ned Segal, the Chief Financial Officer of Twitter, where he has been the CFO since 2017. Ned has a long and distinguished career across the worlds of finance in corporate America, investment banking, including a long career at Goldman Sachs, about 16 years. Interestingly, and we'll talk about it in our chat, interestingly, his educational background isn't from the world of finance. So it'll be interesting to talk to him how he made the shift and move into that arena. But I want to welcome you here, Ned. How are you?
I'm doing great, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Good. Thank you for taking your admittedly busy schedule to do this. Appreciate it. As I do these GEMA talks, I really like to talk about a person's life and career journey. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to start from your early days. I know you grew up in the I believe in the San Francisco area. Is that correct?
I did. I was born in New York, and in the mid 70s, my father moved our family out here to work in the semiconductor industry, where all these incredible office buildings are with companies like Twitter and Intel and Google and others all around the valley. Those were just orange groves, and there wasn't as much traffic on the freeway. And I'm grateful he had the foresight to do that my mother had the patience to give it a shot. And it's been fun to be here ever since.
So as I alluded to in my initial chat there, you grew up in San Francisco, and when you were going to college, and you ended up going to Georgetown, of course, talk about what you were thinking about, why Georgetown, what were you interested in studying, and why you ultimately decided to go there?
Well, I'd already had the best job in the world by the time I got to Georgetown. I sold hot dogs at Candlestick Park when I was in high school. So I got to see the Giants and the Niners during some pretty good years and make good money and take my then girlfriend, now wife, out to dinner from time to time. So that was a lot of fun. But I wanted to find something almost as exciting and fulfilling. And I had really enjoyed learning foreign languages, interacting with people in their native tongue, learning about the cultures in Latin America, in Spain, and I had begun to study French as well. So I wanted to go to Georgetown and learn more about these cultures and really nail the languages, and then go be an entrepreneur in Latin America. And I got stuck along the way. I thought, as I was a senior and the investment banks were coming to campus, I realized I could learn a lot with a finance background that I didn't get at Georgetown. So I thought I'd go spend a few years at Goldman Sachs, and that turned into almost 17 years before I moved on.
And one thing that maybe some folks, maybe particularly some younger people listening, or even in college, is a lot of the investment banks, when they recruit, they don't always necessarily recruit people with business backgrounds, right? They're recruiting from the top Ivy League schools. I had friends in my Morgan Stanley program who were art history majors and who were, English majors. So talk about what that was like, not having any experience in that. And then I think you started in equity sales. Is that what I think you mentioned?
I did. So
what was it like? I mean, there must have been some training, but it must have been quite a stark move.
So one, I went to work at an investment because I felt I could learn more about finance than I did at Georgetown. I actually had a management major, but that wasn't enough, or management minor rather, but that wasn't enough of the rigorous finance background that I thought would really help me with whatever I did next. I didn't dream of being a CFO or working in finance for a long time, but I thought it was a powerful foundation when coupled with the liberal arts background that we all get at Georgetown. But I also discovered as I interviewed that although investment banks would hire people with liberal arts majors, that I wasn't ready to be in investment banking. I didn't know how to build a model. Right. I didn't have the background in corporate finance or accounting that one needs to be able to hit the ground running. And that was a big aha for me in two ways. One, no regrets about the liberal arts background or studying Spanish. I get to be here talking to all of you today. I get to speak foreign languages, and I have the background and breadth that provides me, because a lot of times as a CFO or another executive at a company, you're just helping run a company with a finance lens or with the lens of the marketer or the leader for the people team. And a liberal arts background comes into play a lot when you're looking back to history for previous experiences people have had, when you're thinking about how to approach a challenge, when you have to write a document for a board of directors. So those experiences have helped me a lot, but they weren't enough for me to move into finance in the way that I wanted to. So I started in equity sales, as you mentioned, Rich. And about 7 years in, I moved into investment banking. I ultimately led the global software practice in banking, which was a ton of fun and gave me the opportunity to work with boards and executive teams at some of the most critical times in their company's trajectories, going public, selling their company, buying another company. And as I did that, I really liked what they were doing and realized that if I wanted to practice leadership, which I had always done, whether it was in student government or on sports teams, that I probably wasn't going to do it at Goldman Sachs. I was probably going to do it as an operator. And that really led me to leave for operating roles.
Yeah. Let's stay on the Goldman thing for a while. So to help people understand the difference between equity sales and investment banking, because they're pretty different functionally speaking, and the skill sets required. Talk a little bit about what it meant to be in equity sales and what that role entailed vis-a-vis going into investment banking.
Well, in the equities business, your customer is the investor, not the operator. And so you're flying at a different altitude. And so you know a little bit about hundreds of things in the broader economy, and you help your client, the mutual fund or hedge fund, get access to all the things that your firm has.
Right.
One of the really fun parts of that was when we took companies public, I'd get to spend a day with the management team. And so if we go back to the late 90s and early 2000s, that meant that eBay and Juniper, which became really big, successful companies, and eToys and Webvan, which went bankrupt, that I got to spend a day with those management teams.
Right.
And I learned so much from each of them, but I wasn't still able to get as deep into what these companies did as one does in banking, let alone be prepared to be an operator. And so as my learning curve flattened out a little bit, which isn't to say that it isn't an awesome job. I learned a ton doing it, and many people do it for decades.
Right.
I realized that for me to achieve my career goals, that going a little bit deeper into what companies do and getting a more rigorous finance background would help me a lot. So I moved to investment banking.
And talk a little bit about what do you think it took to be, because obviously an extremely successful career on the investment banking side there. What were some of the key attributes that you think made you successful in that job? Personal attributes and professional skills.
There are some attributes that are important no matter what job you have. If you're not curious, it's tough to work in the knowledge economy. If you're not willing to work hard around things that you find interesting, and I really loved what I was doing, and I love what I'm doing now, it's tough to be successful in a really competitive economy, right, where there are other people who might be as clever and as experienced and collaborative as one of us, but might be willing to work a little bit harder. So curiosity and the willingness to work hard were high on the list, but so too are things that you learn in college, that you learn on teams, that you learn in clubs, like problem solving, like being patient. And I'm often, if there are any Twitter folks, they're laughing when they hear me talk about being patient. That's not my best attribute, but in a meeting, I try to be patient, try to listen to other people before I opine. Mm-hmm. I recognize we can't do everything tomorrow, but it's my job to work with the team and figure out the things where we can move as fast as possible, and those that we're not going to prioritize that we'll wait around. Yeah. And so those attributes helped a lot in banking. What I found I didn't use as much as I wanted to was leadership.
Was what? Say that again?
With leadership. You work with smaller teams in banking, and whether it's in your career, Rich, or in mine as operators, you get to work with much bigger teams where if you're not leading in a way that inspires others, if you're not leading in a way that can be translated when you're not in the room, right, if you're not leading in the way where you can be reasonably predictable and principled, it's really hard to lead at scale. And those have been really fun challenges for me in my operating roles.
Yeah. So you referenced the fact that after the long career at Goldman, you did make the decision to, as we say, go in-house, and you decided to, you wanted to pursue being a CFO of a company. In this case, it was a public company. Talk a little bit about what that was like, and how that, again, another set of skills. You brought up leadership, but another set of skills required.
So first, in my 15th year at Goldman Sachs, I started to realize that my learning curve was not as steep as I hoped it would be. and that I was really at my best with a steep learning curve.
Yep.
And I went into my mentor and boss after thinking about this for a long time and talking to my personal board of directors, to my wife, to my father, to some mentors who I got to know over time, incredible people like Bill Campbell. And they coached me through this. And I went into my boss and I said, this was amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to go find an operating job because of all the reasons that we've already talked about.
Yeah.
And George Lee was incredibly thoughtful at the time and listened patiently. And he and a few other people helped me take on some more operating responsibility at Goldman. So I ended up staying an extra year to give those things a shot because I felt like, after 15 and a half years, it's worth another year to see if this is really the right decision. But the year did affirm for me that no matter how much I took on at the level that I was at leading a banking practice, that I wasn't going to be rewarded. And I wasn't supposed to spend my time leading. I was supposed to spend my time helping software companies get their most important transactions done with Goldman Sachs. During that year, one of the companies I took public, which is called RPX, it was a cool company. Nobody's ever done anything like them. We bought patents out of litigation between patent trolls and technology companies to end the litigation. And we sold a subscription service to the largest technology companies in the world. And I really loved the people. I knew the company extremely well from having led their IPO as a banker. And it felt like a terrific entree into an operating role as a CFO. We had 14 people on our finance team and $250 million of revenue. So it was at a different scale than we are at Twitter today, but it was a great introduction and was incredibly affirming that this was a role and a field where I could make a difference, where I could be successful and where I would really thrive.
Yeah, great. And I know after a successful run there, you went to Intuit, where I think you became a regional, a divisional CFO,
That's right,
if you will,
So
at a very big company.
I realized that in order to learn all the things that I really felt I needed to learn to be a big company CFO and to lead at scale and to help others do so, that I had skills and traits that I needed to sharpen, that I had to sharpen in a larger organization. And I needed exposure to somebody who was a seasoned veteran at these things. And Intuit had been a client of mine at Goldman. I'd almost gone to work there previously. The CFO had been there for 7 or 8 years and was getting towards the end of his run. And he took me to lunch. He said, why don't you come work at Intuit? And it really was exactly what I thought I needed, faster than I thought. I didn't feel great about leaving RPX after a couple of years, but the opportunity to learn from an incredible mentor and to lead at a different scale, albeit in a lesser title, if you will, than the one that I had at RPX. It was terrific. I got to learn so much from the founder, Scott Cook, from the then CEO, Brad Smith, and from Neil Williams, who was my manager. He was the CFO, and from others. And then 3 years later, when Twitter was looking for a CFO, I was really prepared in a way that I would not have been if it were not for that experience. It was a valuable lesson for me. And Rich, I'm sure you've had this in your career. There are times where you got to go slow to go fast. You got to slow down and figure out which skills you need in order to really supercharge your career wherever you're trying to go. And taking a step back is sometimes a really good way to do that.
It's a valuable piece of advice that I think you probably agree that when you speak to, younger folks who sometimes they don't even think of that, because it's always, how do I get to the next ladder? How do I get promoted? How do I have a bigger title? And to have that wisdom at that time, and obviously, like you said, you listened to some advisors as well. Sounds like that was a smart strategy and something we always have to remind not only ourselves, but I think others as well.
Well, it goes along with something that I think about a lot. And I think the Georgetown education should really help people with this as well, which is you got to enjoy the journey. If you're not having fun doing what you're doing because it's solely in service of getting you somewhere else,
right,
you better not do it for very long, because people around you will notice it. It might not be the people at your work who will notice it, but your loved ones will notice.
Yeah.
And my wife has seen me in moments when I wasn't as happy as I deserve to be, as she deserves for me to be. And you can't do that for too long. And so really try to enjoy the journey and not to be in too much of a rush or reevaluate whether you're in the right place.
Yeah. What attracted you to Twitter?
Well, so many things attracted me to Twitter. One incredible statistic, which I heard, because Twitter was in a different place at the time. We'd finished 2 years of layoffs. Jack, our CEO and founder, had been back into the company for a year and a half or so. I was told that 2 million or more people come to Twitter every day who are not on the service for the previous month, and that almost a third of them had never been on Twitter before at that point. And that blew me away, because the company was getting better and better operationally. The strategy was clear. Jack was putting together the team that he wanted to prosecute the strategy with. And we were just starting to get our sea legs underneath us after a couple of years of layoffs and restructuring and so on. And I thought, to be in this role at a purpose-driven company, our purpose is to serve the public conversation, to work with an iconic founder, to work with a terrific management team, to do it 2 miles from our home, and to do it at a time when everything wasn't really in stone yet. All this, the turnaround that we were driving, it felt like a terrific place for me to go, where I could thrive, where somebody with my skill set could thrive, because not everybody's meant to be in any given role at any company. We're a reasonably unstructured organization. And as far as CFOs go, I've been accused of being reasonably unstructured. Although as far as people go, I might show up on the pretty structured side of things. And it's been a lot of fun.
And what, when you got there in your early time there, what would you say, how you put your imprint on the company? Are there some specific things you can point to?
Well, there are a couple of things that come.
Yeah.
One is, we had gone through a tough time where a lot of the decisions that we made were finance driven. They're finance driven because of the continuity and incredible leadership that my predecessor, Anthony Noto, had provided. They were finance driven because we had to make some hard and fast decisions, respecting our public shareholders and the fact that we hadn't delivered against our commitments in previous years. And it was important to me, and it was important to Jack and the team, to unwind that a company that's finance led isn't leading with its purpose, isn't distributing accountability in the ways that can really help you thrive in a durable way. And this is something I frankly learned at RPX in my early days, that if everybody's coming to the CFO to make any decision that has a dollar sign, you've got all kinds of problems coming your way, because people aren't learning how to make decisions, because everything's stuck in one person's inbox waiting for approval. And so I'm really proud of how I was part of the team that helped distribute the decision-making to allow us to scale the way we have. Since then, we've doubled the revenue. We've more than doubled the size of the team. We've more than doubled the number of people who use our service every day. So we've made a lot of progress.
Yeah. Obviously, everybody knows Twitter, but can you, just to give them a sort of a sense of the sheer magnitude of Twitter, do you have any statistics you can share with us on just the size of Twitter, in terms of like how many tweets in a day, or how many users in a month or a week? Or I think it'd be helpful for people to get a sense of that.
Sure. So we're privileged to be this iconic brand that is known because you see it on 1 million websites. You see it in our own app or on our website on a browser. There are newspaper articles about tweets or that reference tweets. You turn on the news with our fellow alumnus, Nora O'Donnell, and she's referencing tweets as she does the news.
Yep.
And we found this place where people come to Twitter to stay informed, to discuss what matters, or to inform others. And over history, human beings have gone to lots of different places to do one or two of those things, but we believe nobody does all three of them the way that we do. And today, or as of the end of the last quarter, 211 million people came to Twitter on any given day to find out what's happening in the world and what people are talking about, not just around politics, but when Taylor Swift dropped her new album, there were millions of tweets last week. During the Olympics, there were 76 billion impressions about Olympics tweets. Wow. During the Video Music Awards, which I am disappointed I missed, but apparently a lot of people didn't miss, because there were 2 billion impressions around the Video Music Awards a couple months ago.
Hmm.
We're just the place where people come to talk about the things that they care about most and to learn from others. And so those numbers give you a little bit of sense for the magnitude. But what we also think about, Rich, is there still are 7 billion people who don't come to Twitter every day.
Hmm.
And that's what gets us out of bed in the morning.
Right. And what's it take to get them to come, do you think?
Well, fortunately, a lot of them still come. They're stubborn. They know there's something on Twitter that can make them smarter. A friend wanted them to see, so they texted it to them. They sent it to them on Snapchat or Instagram. But we still have a lot of work to do to make it easy for people to find what they're looking for. That means discovery. It means onboarding. It means the notifications that you get. It even means the ads that you see. Because if we can do a better job with each of those things, you'll spend the right amount of time on Twitter. We don't actually solve for time spent.
Right.
That would be tough to do in a lot of ways. We don't want to motivate our engineers to keep people on Twitter longer. We want to make it as easy as possible for people to find what they're looking for, because then they'll keep coming back, whatever the right amount is.
I've also noticed just recently, obviously, in terms of innovation and new products and new areas you're venturing into, for instance, on the audio side with Twitter Spaces, you have this new subscription service called Blue. Can you talk a little bit about those and maybe others I don't know about, other ways that people are finding new ways to interact with the brand?
Yeah. So we're moving a lot faster than we were before. If you can imagine, it wasn't until 2016, so just 5 years ago, that we introduced an algorithm that organized tweets. Before then, everything was reverse chronological. And so Jack came back to the company in 2015. It took about a year to get going. And that was this massive unlock where people at Twitter all of a sudden, wow, we can do a better job organizing this, because everybody knew it was noisy and confusing and hard to find what you're looking for. Once you start down that path, then you start to think, well, what else can we do to help people find what they're looking for? We thought about new formats. So video tweets, more characters, a thread of tweets. You mentioned Twitter Spaces, which are the live audio chat rooms where you and I could be talking and somebody else could jump into the conversation and other people may just choose to listen. And so instead of just seeing tweets back and forth from people learning about something from each other, now you can have a room that people can listen to. But we also have innovated on the revenue side, not just with better ad formats, but also saying, I bet there are some premium features that we can create that people would be happy to pay us for. And they'd be happy to pay us because they get so much out of Twitter already. And these extra features are things that, if you look at other premium models, these are things that people tend to be comfortable paying for. So we added an undo button. We added a top articles feature, so I can see all the articles that my network is most likely to be reading right now. We added ad-free long form, so articles from newspapers and magazines for people to read without ads, which is a great way to get creators paid without requiring them to show ads to people.
Interesting. So Blue has launched, right?
Blue is out.
Yeah.
You all should go and sign up right now. It's only $2.99 a month.
Right.
Over time, we'll have more levels. We'll have more features as well. This is just the first one. It's available in Canada, Australia, and the US now.
Great. And when you think about, and you explain what Twitter is Twitter, is it a media company? Is it a tech company? Is it a combo? How would you express that?
We're a technology company. We want to lead with scalable technology that can be leveraged however people want. We didn't create the hashtag. Others did.
Interesting.
On Twitter. We don't want to tell people what conversation they should be having on Twitter or to pick the experts in that space. We want to give people the tools to amplify other people's voice through likes and follows and retweets, to amplify their own voice by earning or buying voice if they want to buy ads, as opposed to what a media lens might suggest, which would be to say, we're going to create content as opposed to facilitating the creation of the content.
And, for me as a pretty avid user, I've seen one of the biggest changes I've seen over the last probably 5 to 7 years is the incorporation of video. And I think about it. Sometimes I'll go, if I want to see a video clip from a baseball game or a basketball game or a football game, that may be the first place you see it.
That's right. So we
Yeah,
do deals with the leagues
right.
and the content owners to make sure that the biggest highlights are on Twitter. They do it with us for a couple of reasons. One, we get to split the ad dollar with them. We have what's called pre-roll, so an ad in front of the highlight. But two, they want to be where the conversation is, and they want to facilitate the next fan of that sport finding them on Twitter. So we had every gold medal moment. We have every goal during the World Cup. We have every touchdown during the NFL season. We have a program where people were able to vote last year to pick which batter on a given night they wanted to see their at-bats live on Twitter, because you might not be in a place where you can watch the whole game, but if we notify you, you might step in to watch Shohei's at-bat.
Yeah.
And these have been great unlocks for us because the conversation's already on Twitter. Now we have the content about which that conversation is happening.
Right. If you were going to fast forward 5 years, 7 years, will Twitter look the same? Will it be different?
I'm not sure
how do
it'll
you
look the
envision it?
same, but it should still serve the same purpose.
Yeah.
We want to be what's happening and what people are talking about right now, or those three jobs, as we call them: stay informed, discuss what matters, and inform others. So we'll still be doing those in a decade. It might be on your goggles. It might be on a lens in your eye. It might be on your wrist.
Mhm.
But we're going to stick to those three because there's going to be a lot for us to do around them for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, it's clear there's still tremendous opportunity and upside potential for Twitter, especially when you remarked about the 7 billion. What are some of the challenges in today's intensely competitive world?
Well, there are a lot of challenges. One, being a purpose-driven company, it's really important that we bring people to Twitter who are aligned with our purpose, but it's a lot of work, especially when you're doing it on Zoom, to find incredible people to join our company and to keep them in a very competitive job market. We're really pleased with how we're doing, but it's not an accident.
Yeah.
Two is, a lot of times people lump a group of companies together because we're apps on a phone, because we all have ad models, because we're led by high-profile founders,
Right.
because we have goofy CFOs. Who knows what the reasons might be that we might lump them together. And we work really hard to distinguish ourselves and have our work stand on its own in a way that might be easier for somebody who uses Twitter a lot like you to understand, but might be harder for the casual observer,
Yeah.
regulator, policymaker on another part of the planet to understand.
Yep.
And given the reach that we have, it's really important that we stay focused on that. A third challenge that we think a lot about is this incredibly dynamic environment around privacy. Companies and platforms are making decisions. Governments are making decisions. We need to be respectful of those. We need to show people what we stand for. And then we need to deliver awesome ads to people. And balancing all that can be a lot, but we work really hard to get it right.
Yeah. Love to get your thoughts and take on maybe your philosophy on leadership and the like. Talk about the kind of leader you are and how you generally like to lead. And if someone was going to speak to people who work for you, what are some of the adjectives maybe they'd use to describe your leadership style?
Well, I'll just stick to the nice ones, I think, but I'm sure there might be some less nice ones. So I try to be principled and authentic. I try to approach most things that way in my life.
Yeah.
But I also try to approach things with humor, that'd be 2A under authentic, that is. And I try to approach things with curiosity and kindness. I hope that those are 2B and 2C. I was not always principled, but I learned that if you want people to be able to translate your leadership, you better be principled, because then they don't have to ask you how you'd make a certain decision. They can harken back to a principle that you've agreed on already.
Right.
And then without being in the room, people can think through the questions you might ask, the reactions you might have to a proposal that they have. So that can be really clarifying for the people around you. And authentic is important, probably for obvious reasons. It makes things a lot more fun. I don't have to remember what I say most of the time because I'd say the same thing again.
Right.
If I'm showing up in an authentic way.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have to apologize for moving too fast Sometimes I have to apologize for asking too many questions, but I try really hard to be as respectful of others as I hope that they'd be of me and of our shareholders, our customers, our partners, the people who use Twitter, because we all take our cues from one another and how to show up in a given situation. And a lot of times we find ourselves in tense situations. That's not permission to be a jerk.
Yeah.
It's not permission to stop listening to others.
Yeah.
And in a role like mine, I have the opportunity and the responsibility to demonstrate those traits for others.
And, you know, being a CFO of a public company is not for the faint-hearted. It's a very intense, stressful job, rewarding as well, but intense and stressful. And aside from the financial acumen, which is obvious that you need, what do you think is like the single most important trait for being a successful public company CFO?
Well, if I look at the CFO peers of mine who I get together with regularly and commiserate and lean on each other when we need help, we all are really disciplined about what our role is and what the CEO's role is, or what the head of products role is, or whatever the type of company is, the other people around them on the leadership team. And that our job is not to slow people down. Our job is not to say no. Our job is to get to yes. How can we help people accomplish their goals? How can we get them the resources they need? How can we keep the company's cost of capital as low as possible? And so many things we do ladder up to how can we get to yes? So the session that I have after this is with a bunch of people internally where we're trying to work through our 2022 plan. Mm-hmm. And we know that we can't do everything that we want to do.
Right.
And it's not my job to say we can do this and we can't do that. It's my job to bring a financial lens to that discussion to help everybody think about the trade-offs. If I'm making the decisions, something's gone wrong. That's not my role. But if I'm coming with a point of view and helping inform others' point of views, and those are tricky because they can be in conflict sometimes.
Right.
Then I'm helping Jack and helping the company as best I can.
And for folks listening in who are just starting their career or looking to advance in their career, be it, let's pick finance for now, like the financial track. What are some of your pieces of advice to people? What advice do you like to dispense to people when they're trying to think about how to grow their career or
sure
themselves?
So, yeah, the people in banking who thrived at junior levels weren't the ones who worked 24 hours a day. Everybody worked hard.
Right.
They were the people who thought the most about the work that they were doing and anticipated questions and asked themselves the next level of questions or the next layer of questions. It can be hard when it's 9 or 10 o'clock at night and somebody said to you, build this model 15 hours earlier. It could be tempting to just, when you finish the model, hit send and go to sleep. Mm-hmm. But the best analysts and associates are always the ones, and this is true, frankly, on our finance team as well.
Yeah.
Are the ones who take a break, catch their breath, and then open up the model and say, what are the insights that I have from looking at this model? And what are the insights that I can share, the questions, the places I can probe?
Yeah.
I know I'm tired, and maybe it doesn't have to be done at 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
But thinking about that next step and the person who's going to get your work and what their job is, mm-hmm. is, I find, both fun and a lot more fun than building that model. Yeah. But also helps that person see the mindset and curiosity that you bring to your work and how they could envision you at another level in the organization.
Yeah. So part of it, I guess, part of that is about sort of synthesizing information, right? You have all these data inputs and all this information, you're spitting it, putting into this model and spitting out, but then actually a little bit like, what does it mean? What's the context and such?
We, on our finance team, our motto for our team is influence the outcome, not make the decision, influence the outcome. We talk about being curious. We talk about asking for forgiveness, not permission. Mm-hmm. We talk about escalating with purpose. Mm-hmm. And these are ways to help people think And sometimes somebody will send me an email and it'll say, do you want us to do A or B?
Right. It's like,
And I
not,
can
not
be
the email
very
you want.
annoying when I get that one, because sometimes I'll
Yeah.
send it back and say, escalate with purpose. Because a lot of times in your field or mine, there's way more than one right answer.
Sure.
And the worst thing you can do is have indecision. And if somebody has a strong point of view that's well informed and they lay it out for me, even if I disagree, I'm often likely to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Because they're going to learn a lot more and they're going to own the outcome a lot more if we try it their way.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. And what about when someone's coming in to interview with you? What are some of the, key markers you're looking for or trying to, penetrate?
Sure. So one, I started out interviewing people, and I'm not too proud of how I did it at the time. I think I like to make people uncomfortable and thought I'd learn more if I could see if they got uncomfortable or not.
Mhm.
And interviewing is not a sport. Interviewing is a way to get to know people. And so the first thing I just try to make the person as comfortable as possible, because that's how I'm going to get to know them best and how they're going to get to show their best work, because 90 days in, they better be comfortable. And so we're going to get to see them in comfortable mode.
Mhm.
Two, whether the thing that they are expert in is the thing for which we're interviewing them or something else, I'm really curious to hear them talk about something that they're excellent at.
Mhm.
Because you learn so much from somebody when you get to hear the passion in their voice.
Yeah.
When you get to hear them describe something that they love.
Mhm.
And sometimes that love isn't for Twitter. It's not for a spreadsheet. It's not for an audit function or something else on our
Right.
finance team. Sometimes it's for basket weaving.
Right.
But then they better have a really good explanation for why they love basket weaving. And when I ask them to tell me about their favorite basket, they better have a good story.
That's right. They better have a good answer. That's great. It's funny. I really agree with you on the keeping people at ease, and because you don't always hear that from people as how they conduct interviews. And I totally agree. It's because you're going to be working with these people, as you said, day in and day out, and you want to understand that person and what makes them tick.
And you want to represent your company or your organization
Yeah.
in a way that will make the rest of your organization proud.
Yeah.
And making somebody uncomfortable, ask them questions to watch them squirm.
Yeah.
Those are never things that are going to make us proud of our company or make somebody else want to work there.
Yeah, it's a great point. In the couple of minutes we have left here, we skirted through Georgetown pretty quickly, but would love to ask you a little bit about, what impact Georgetown had on your life or your career, or anything you took from that experience that in your life that you'd love to share with people.
I loved Georgetown. I love Georgetown. They were the best 4 years of my education. Some of our best friends are people who I went to college with.
Right.
Some of my strongest professional relationships were either forged at Georgetown.
Is that right?
Or Georgetown has facilitated in one way or another, or causes me or somebody else to give each other the benefit of the doubt a little bit more than we otherwise might, and has caused us to invest more in our relationship with one another. We're all very fortunate to be affiliated with an institution that has a lot of incredibly gifted, kind people who have spread out across the world, not just the United States, and across all kinds of industries, not just media, not just tech, but finance and so many other areas. Mm-hmm. And it is a crime if we don't all benefit from that in one way or another and pay it forward.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to have attended Georgetown for so many reasons, but a big one is that we all look out for each other. And that can be recruiting, going back to campus. It can be taking a call from somebody who's interested in your company or your field. It can be doing a talk with a group of people who are affiliated with the school, or it can be seeing folks from the administration or the faculty when they're nice enough to come out and travel.
And as you know well, which some folks may not on this call, the Georgetown Tech Alliance, which was created probably a decade ago now.
About 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's amazing how many tech luminaries we have who went to Georgetown, including yourself. Sometimes people aren't even aware of it until they learn more about it. So that for any young person, it's a great resource, I think.
There's some great folks in tech who went to Georgetown, which might not be immediately intuitive
Right,
because we don't have
right,
a program that's known for
right.
raising product and engineering people. But when you look around, that liberal arts education and foundation, even if it's underneath a finance degree, or in my case, a Spanish major, helps you organize your thoughts and write things down in ways that can be incredibly helpful to people across the different parts of a technology company or any operating company.
Yeah, great. Ned, I really appreciate you doing this. Again, I know you have a crazy, crazy schedule, so it's really appreciated and hope you enjoyed it. And I hope we see each other soon, but really thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you, Rich. Thanks for having me. Hoya Saxa.
Okay, Hoya Saxa. Take care, Ned.
Bye.
Thank you.